did look like bites, she thought. The kid groaned and she put her camera aside and bent toward him. His lips moved, his tongue thick. "Raptor," he said. "Losaraptor." At those words, Manuel froze, stepped back in horror. "What does it mean?" Bobby said. Manuel shook his head. "I do not know, Doctor. Losaraptor no es español." "No?" It sounded to her like Spanish. "Then please continue to wash him." "No, Doctor." He wrinkled his nose. "Bad smell." And he crossed himself. Bobby looked again at the slippery foam streaked across the wound. She touched it, rubbing it between her fingers. It seemed almost like saliva. The injured boy's lips moved. "Raptor," he whispered. In a tone of horror, Manuel said, "It bit him." "What bit him?" "Raptor." "What's a raptor?" "It means upia." Bobby frowned. The Costa Ricans were not especially superstitious, but she had heard the upia mentioned in the village before. They were said to be night ghosts, faceless vampires who kidnapped small children. According to the belief, the upia had once lived in the mountains of Costa Rica, but now inhabited the islands offshore. Manuel was backing away, murmuring and crossing himself. "It is not normal, this smell," he said. "It is the upia." Bobby was about to order him back to work when the injured youth opened his eyes and sat straight up on the table. Manuel shrieked in terror. The injured boy moaned and twisted his head, looking left and right with wide, staring eyes, and then he explosively vomited blood. He went immediately into convulsions, his body vibrating, and Bobby grabbed for him, but he shuddered off the table onto the concrete floor. He vomited again. There was blood everywhere. Ed opened the door, saying, "What the hell's happening?" And when he saw the blood, he turned away, his hand to his mouth. Bobby was grabbing for a stick to put in the boy's clenched jaws, but even as she did it, she knew it was hopeless. And with a final spastic jerk, he relaxed and lay still. She bent to perform mouth-to-mouth, but Manuel grabbed her shoulder fiercely, pulling her back. "No," he said. "The upia will cross over." "Manuel, for God's sake, no!" He stared at her fiercely. "No, you do not understand these things." Bobby looked at the body on the ground and realized that it didn't matter. There was no possibility of resuscitating him. Manuel called for the men, who came back into the room and took the body away. Ed appeared, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand, muttering, "I'm sure you did all you could." And then she watched as the men took the body away, back to the helicopter, and it lifted thunderously up into the sky. "It is better," Manuel said. Bobby was thinking about the boy's hands. They had been covered with cuts and bruises in the characteristic pattern of defense wounds. She was quite sure he had not died in a construction accident. He had been attacked, and he had held up his hands against his attacker. "Where is this island they come from?" she asked. "In the ocean. Perhaps 120 miles offshore." "Pretty far for a resort," she said. Manuel watched the helicopter. "I hope they never come back." Well, she thought, at least she had pictures. But when she turned back to the table, she saw that her camera was gone. The rain finally stopped later that night. Alone in the bedroom behind the clinic, Bobby thumbed through her tattered paperback Spanish dictionary. The boy had said raptor, and despite Manuel's protests, she suspected it was a Spanish word. Sure enough, she found it in her dictionary. It meant ravisher or abductor. That gave her pause. The sense of the word was suspiciously close to the meaning of upia. Of course, she did not believe in the superstition, and no ghost had cut those hands. What had the boy been trying to tell her? From the next room, she heard groans. One of the village women was in the first stage of labor, and Elena Morales, the local midwife, was attending her. Bobby went into the clinic room and gestured to Elena to step outside for a moment. "Elena, see, Doctor? Do you know what is a raptor?" Elena was gray-haired and 60, a strong woman with a practical, no-nonsense air. In the night, beneath the stars, she frowned and said, "Raptor? Yes, you know this word?" "See," Elena nodded. "It means a person who comes in the night and takes away a child." "A kidnapper?" "Yes." Upia? Her whole manner changed. Do not say this word, Doctor. Why not? Do not speak of Upia now, Elena said firmly, nodding her head toward the groans of the laboring woman. It is not wise to say this word now. But does a raptor bite and cut his victims? Bite and cut? Elena said, puzzled. No, Doctor. Nothing like this. A raptor is a man who takes a new baby. She seemed irritated by the conversation, impatient to end it. Elena started back toward the clinic. I will call to you when she is ready, Doctor. I think 1 hour more, perhaps 2. Bobby looked at the stars and listened to the peaceful lapping of the surf at the shore. In the darkness, she saw the shadows of the fishing boats anchored offshore. The whole scene was quiet, so normal. She felt foolish to be talking of vampires and kidnapped babies. Bobby went back to her room, remembering again that Manuel had insisted it was not a Spanish word. Out of curiosity, she looked in the little English dictionary, and to her surprise, she found the word there, too. Raptor, noun, derivation of Latin raptor, plunderer, French raptus, bird of prey. First iteration. At the earliest drawings of the fractal curve, few clues to the underlying mathematical structure will be seen. Ian Malcolm. Almost Paradise. Mike Bowman whistled cheerfully as he drove the Land Rover through the Cabo Blanco Biological Reserve on the west coast of Costa Rica. It was a beautiful morning in July, and the road before him was spectacular, hugging the edge of a cliff overlooking the jungle and the blue Pacific. According to the guidebooks, Cabo Blanco was unspoiled wilderness, almost a paradise. Seeing it now made Bowman feel as if the vacation was back on track. Bowman, a 36-year-old real estate developer from Dallas, had come to Costa Rica with his wife and daughter for a 2-week holiday. The trip had actually been his wife's idea. For weeks, Ellen had filled his ear about the wonderful national parks of Costa Rica and how good it would be for Tina to see them. Then, when they arrived, it turned out Ellen had an appointment to see a plastic surgeon in San Jose. That was the first Mike Bowman had heard about the excellent and inexpensive plastic surgery available in Costa Rica, and all the luxurious private clinics in San Jose. Of course, they'd had a huge fight. Mike felt she'd lied to him, and she had. And he put his foot down about this plastic surgery business. Anyway, it was ridiculous. Ellen was only 30, and she was a beautiful woman. Hell, she'd been homecoming queen her senior year at Rice, and that was not even 10 years earlier. But Ellen tended to be insecure and worried. And it seemed as if, in recent years, she had mostly worried about losing her looks. That and everything else. The Land Rover bounced in a pothole, splashing mud. Seated beside him, Ellen said, "Mike, are you sure this is the right road? We haven't seen any other people for hours." "There was another car 15 minutes ago," he reminded her. "Remember, the blue one?" "Going the other way. Darling, you wanted a deserted beach," he said, "and that's what you're gonna get." Ellen shook her head doubtfully. "I hope you're right." "Yeah, Dad, I hope you're right," said Christina from the back seat. She was 8 years old. "Trust me, I'm right." He drove in silence a moment. "It's beautiful, isn't it? Look at that view. It's beautiful." "It's okay," Tina said. Ellen got out a compact and looked at herself in the mirror, pressing under her eyes. She sighed and put the compact away. The road began to descend, and Mike Bowman concentrated on driving. Suddenly, a small black shape flashed across the road, and Tina shrieked, "Look! Look!" Then it was gone into the jungle. "What was it?" Ellen asked. "A monkey?" "Maybe a squirrel monkey," Bowman said. "Can I count it?" Tina said, taking her pencil out. She was keeping a list of all the animals she had seen on her trip as a project for school. "I don't know," Mike said doubtfully. Tina consulted the pictures in the guidebook. "I don't think it was a squirrel monkey," she said. "I think it was just another howler." They had seen several howler monkeys already on their trip. "Hey," she said more brightly, "according to this book, the beaches of Cabo Blanco are frequented by a variety of wildlife, including howler and white-faced monkeys, three-toed sloths, and coatimundis. You think we'll see a three-toed sloth, Dad?" "I bet we do."
Really?
Just look in the mirror.
Very funny, Dad.
The road sloped downward through the jungle toward the ocean. Mike Bowman felt like a hero when they finally reached the beach. A 2-mile crescent of white sand, utterly deserted. He parked the Land Rover in the shade of the palm trees that fringed the beach and got out the box lunches. Ellen changed into her bathing suit, saying, "Honestly, I don't know how I'm going to get this weight off." "You look great, huh?" Actually, he felt that she was too thin, but he had learned not to mention that. Tina was already running down the beach.
Don't forget you need your sunscreen,
Ellen called.
Later,
Tina shouted over her shoulder.
I'm going to see if there's a sloth.
Ellen Bowman looked around at the beach and the trees.
You think she's all right?
"Honey, there's nobody here for miles," Mike said.
What about snakes?
"Oh, for God's sake," Mike Bowman said. "There's no snakes on a beach."
Well, there might be.
"Honey," he said firmly, "snakes are cold-blooded. They're reptiles. They can't control their body temperature. It's 90 degrees on that sand. If a snake came out, it'd be cooked. Believe me, there's no snakes on the beach." He watched his daughter scampering down the beach, a dark spot on the white sand. "Let her go. Let her have a good time." He put his arm around his wife's waist. Tina ran until she was exhausted, and then she threw herself down on the sand and gleefully rolled to the water's edge. The ocean was warm, and there was hardly any surf at all. She sat for a while, catching her breath, and then she looked back toward her parents in the car to see how far she had come. Her mother waved, beckoning her to return. Tina waved back cheerfully, pretending she didn't understand. Tina didn't want to put sunscreen on, and she didn't want to go back and hear her mother talk about losing weight. She wanted to stay right here and maybe see a sloth. Tina had seen a sloth 2 days earlier at the zoo in San Jose. It looked like a Muppets character, and it seemed harmless. In any case, it couldn't move fast. She could easily outrun it. Now her mother was calling to her, and Tina decided to move out of the sun, back from the water, to the shade of the palm trees. In this part of the beach, the palm trees overhung a gnarled tangle of mangrove roots, which blocked any attempt to penetrate inland. Tina sat in the sand and kicked the dried mangrove leaves. She noticed many bird tracks in the sand. Costa Rica was famous for its birds. The guidebook said there were 3 times as many birds in Costa Rica as in all of America and Canada. In the sand, some of the 3-toed bird tracks were small and so faint they could hardly be seen. Other tracks were large and cut deeper in the sand. Tina was looking idly at the tracks when she heard a chirping, followed by a rustling in the mangrove thicket. Did sloths make a chirping sound? Tina didn't think so, but she wasn't sure. The chirping was probably some ocean bird. She waited.